I stood in my wedding dress alone in the bridal room staring at my phone. The text from my mother had just 3 sentences. Dylan's game starts at 2. He's so nervous. We'll call you tonight. My wedding started at 2. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped the phone. It clattered against the tile floor, the same sound my heart made when it finally broke. For 35 years, I had been the invisible daughter, the one who was always fine, the one who sent money every month, paid for their house repairs, helped my brother get into college, all while being told I was too busy to care about family. But standing there, mascara running down my face, no father to walk me down the aisle, I made a decision. I would sell my $680,000 house. I would move across the country. And I would finally stop auditioning for a role I was never meant to play. What I didn't know yet was what I'd discover once I started digging a secret my mother had been hiding for over a decade. Have you ever realized your whole family saw you as nothing but an ATM? My name is Kimberly Arnold. I'm 35 years old, a senior financial analyst at a major investment firm in Denver. And for most of my life, I believed being overlooked was the same thing as being loved. That belief didn't come from nowhere. It was planted when I was 8 years old, the day my baby brother Dylan came home from the hospital. I remember standing on my tiptoes to see him in his crib, this tiny red-faced creature who would reshape our entire family. My parents were young then, barely making ends meet. Mom was 24, Dad was 27. They'd had me before they were ready, and by the time Dylan arrived, they'd figured out what kind of parents they wanted to be. The kind who showed up, the kind who cheered from the sidelines, the kind who made their child feel like the center of the universe. They just decided to be that kind of parent for him, not for me. I became the easy one, the daughter who didn't need help with homework, who packed her own lunches, who never complained when plans changed. And plans always changed when Dylan was involved. He was the boy, the athlete, the future. I was the one who understood. When I was 12, I won first place in the Colorado State essay competition. It was the proudest moment of my young life. Dad had promised to take me to the award ceremony in Colorado Springs. I'd picked out my dress a week early, but the morning of Mom pulled me aside in the kitchen. Her voice was gentle, almost apologetic. Dylan has a really important practice today, honey. The coach said scouts might come watch. Dad needs to take him. You understand, right? I understood. I always understood. I took the bus to Colorado Springs alone. I walked across the stage alone. I accepted my trophy from the governor's wife alone. And when I came home that evening, holding the biggest accomplishment of my 12 years, no one asked about it. Dinner conversations centered on Dylan's practice, his footwork, his potential. My trophy sat on the counter, unopened in its box until I carried it to my room myself. That was the first time. It wasn't the last. When I graduated college summa cum laude, I was chosen to give the valedictorian speech. I'd practiced for weeks. I told my parents the ceremony started at 10. They arrived at noon. They'd taken Dylan to his morning game first because it was on the way. They missed my entire speech. Afterward, Mom hugged me and said, "We're so proud of you." But guess what? Dylan's team won their division. The conversation shifted to him before I could even show them my honor cords. By the time I was 30, I'd built a life entirely on my own. No family money, no connections, no help. I worked my way through graduate school, climbed the corporate ladder, invested carefully, and bought a beautiful townhouse in a desirable Denver neighborhood for $680,000. When my family came to visit, my mother looked around at the hardwood floors, the modern kitchen, the view of the mountains I'd worked 15 years to afford. And she said, "It's nice, but isn't it too big for one person? You should have bought something closer to us. You could help more with Dylan." Not congratulations, not pride, just a reminder that my success was only valuable if it served someone else. The worst part is, I kept helping anyway. Starting when I was 25, I began sending money whenever Mom called with another crisis. She always had rules. Don't tell your father he's too proud. Don't tell Dylan he'll feel guilty. So I sent the transfers, quietly told myself it was temporary, and never once added up the total. I was a financial analyst. Numbers were my entire career, but some numbers I couldn't afford to face. Mom had a phrase she used like a lullaby. "You're so strong, Kimberly. You don't need us like Dylan does." I heard love in those words. I didn't hear the cage. When Marcus proposed 3 years ago, I called Mom immediately, bursting with joy. She listened, said, "That's wonderful, honey." and then without pausing added, "Oh, by the way, Dylan might get a tryout with a semi-pro team this year. Isn't that exciting?" My engagement became a footnote in my brother's story. But I told myself the wedding would be different. For one single day, I would finally be the priority. I had never been more wrong in my entire life. I had never been more wrong in my entire life. But it took me 3 months of planning, hoping, and begging to finally understand just how wrong I was. When Marcus and I set our wedding date, I was careful, more careful than I had ever been about anything. I pulled up Dylan's soccer league schedule on my laptop and cross-referenced every single game, every tournament, every possible conflict. I chose a Saturday in late May, 2 weeks after his regular season ended, but before the summer tournaments began. There was no overlap, no excuse. For once, I had made it impossible for my family to choose Dylan over me. I sent my parents a handwritten invitation, not just the formal printed card that went to everyone else. A personal letter written on cream stationery in my neatest handwriting. I wrote, "This is the most important day of my life. I really need you there, both of you. Please." I sealed it, mailed it, and waited. Mom called 3 days later. Her voice was warm, almost excited. "Of course we'll be there, honey. We wouldn't miss it for the world." I let myself believe her. After 35 years, I still let myself believe her. 2 months before the wedding, I brought up the question I had been afraid to ask. "Mom, I was wondering if Dad would walk me down the aisle." There was a pause on the line. Then Mom said, "I'll talk to him about it, honey. I'm sure he'd love to." But no answer came. No phone call from Dad, no confirmation. A month before the wedding, I asked again. Mom's voice was vague. "He's been so busy with work and helping Dylan train. But I'm sure he will. Don't worry about it." I should have worried. Dad never called me directly. He never had. Every conversation, every decision, every piece of information about my own family flowed through my mother. She was the gatekeeper, and I had never questioned it. I told myself that was just how our family worked. I didn't realize it was how she controlled everything. 5 days before my wedding, my phone rang. It was Mom. Something in her voice told me this was not a happy call. She sounded apologetic, but underneath the apology was something harder, something already decided. "Honey, I have some difficult news. Dylan's team made it to the regional championship final. Can you believe it? They've never gone this far before." She paused. "The playoff schedule just came out last week. We had no way of knowing." My hands went cold. "Mom, when is the championship?" Another pause. "Saturday, the same day as your wedding." The room tilted. I gripped the edge of my kitchen counter. "Mom, you're not saying what I think you're saying. There will be coaches from semi-pro teams watching. This could change Dylan's whole future. He's worked so hard for this. We have to be there for him." I could barely breathe. "I'm only getting married once, Mom. This is my wedding day." And then she said the words that broke something inside me that I don't think will ever fully heal. "You'll understand when you have kids, Kimberly. Sometimes you have to choose the child who needs you more. The child who needs you more." As if need were something she measured, and I had never registered on the scale. As if 35 years of needing her, wanting her, hoping she would see me counted for nothing. As if I had been foolish to expect anything different. I hung up without saying goodbye. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. But I wasn't done. I had one more call to make. I dialed my father's number. It rang 4 times before he picked up. His voice was cautious, surprised. I almost never called him directly. "Dad, Mom said you're not coming to my wedding. Is that true?" A long pause. I could hear him breathing. Finally, he said, "Your mother and I discussed it. Dylan really needs our support right now. This championship is a big deal for him." "Dad," my voice cracked. "I need you too. I need you to walk me down the aisle. I've dreamed about that since I was a little girl." Another pause, longer this time. Then, "I'm sorry, Kimmy. Your mother thinks it's best if we support Dylan right now. You've always been so independent. You'll be fine." He hung up before I could respond. I stood in my kitchen holding a dead phone and realized something I had spent my entire life avoiding. My father wasn't the villain. He wasn't cruel or malicious. He was simply absent. He watched my mother make every decision, steer every conversation, allocate every scrap of attention. And he never once intervened. His sin wasn't choosing Dylan. His sin was never choosing me, never fighting for me, never even asking if I was okay. That night, Marcus found me sitting on the couch staring at nothing. When I told him what happened, I expected him to comfort me, to say something soothing about how families are complicated. Instead, he sat down across from me and said something that changed how I saw everything. Kim, I've watched your family for 3 years. Every holiday, every dinner, every phone call, they don't forget you. They choose not to see you. Every time you mention your work, your mother changes the subject. Every time Dylan comes up, she lights up like he's the only person in the room. This isn't accidental. This is a pattern. And I think it's been going on your whole life. I wanted to defend them. I opened my mouth to explain, to make excuses, to find some reason why Marcus was wrong. But nothing came out, because deep down, I knew he was right. I had always known. I just hadn't been ready to admit it. That night, Marcus made a phone call. I didn't know who he was calling or what he said. I was too numb to ask. The wedding day arrived. I stood in the bridal room of the venue wearing the dress I had dreamed about, looking at myself in the mirror, alone. No mother to adjust my veil. No father to tell me I looked beautiful. No family at all. Just me in a white dress, trying not to cry and ruin my makeup. Then there was a knock at the door. I opened it and found James Webb standing there, Marcus's father. He was 67 years old, a retired high school teacher, a quiet man I had only met a handful of times. He looked uncomfortable, like he wasn't sure he should be there. Marcus told me what happened, he said. Last night. I didn't sleep much after that. I kept thinking about you standing here alone. He paused, cleared his throat. I know I'm not your father, but if you'll allow me, I would be honored to walk you down the aisle. I burst into tears. Not sad tears. Something else. Relief, maybe. Gratitude. For the first time in my life, a father figure had shown up for me, without being asked, without conditions, without needing anything in return. James Webb walked me down the aisle that day. He held my arm gently, patted my hand when I trembled, and delivered me to Marcus with a small nod that said more than words ever could. The ceremony was beautiful. Marcus cried when he saw me. Our friends surrounded us with love. For a few hours, I forgot about the empty seats where my parents should have been. Then during the reception, I checked my phone. There was one message from my mother. Congratulations, honey, Dylan 131. Coaches were so impressed. Send us pictures. 3 exclamation marks for Dylan's victory. None for my wedding. No apology. No acknowledgement that they had missed the most important day of my daughter's life. Just a report on my brother's game, as if that was the real news of the day. I showed the text to Marcus. He read it, looked at me, and said nothing. He didn't need to. That night, lying next to my husband in our hotel room, I cried. But not from sadness. I cried from exhaustion. 35 years of trying to earn something that was never for sale. And in that exhaustion, I finally found clarity. I was done auditioning for a role I would never get. The only question left was what I was going to do about it. The only question left was what I was going to do about it. And surprisingly, the answer didn't come to me in anger. It came to me in numbers. Marcus and I went on a short honeymoon to a quiet beach town in California. We had planned a bigger trip, but after everything that happened, I just needed somewhere peaceful to think. On our 3rd night there, while Marcus slept beside me, I opened my laptop and did something I had avoided for 8 years. I pulled up my bank records, my transfer history, every payment I had ever made to my family, and I added it all up. I am a financial analyst. Numbers are my job. I can look at a spreadsheet and see patterns that other people miss. But for 8 years, I had deliberately kept myself blind to this particular set of numbers. I had never totaled them. I had never let myself see the full picture, because somewhere deep down, I knew that if I saw it, I would have to face what it meant. The total was $153,000. I stared at the screen for a long time, reading each line. $400 a month to cover Dylan's living expenses while he pursued his soccer dreams. That alone was over $38,000 across 8 years. $600 a month to help my parents cover their mortgage after their rate increased. $14,400 over 2 years. 2 major home repairs when their roof leaked and their furnace died. $35,000. The down payment contribution when they bought their current house because they couldn't qualify for the loan on their own. $40,000. And then the emergencies. Car repairs, medical bills, Dylan's equipment, his training camps, his travel expenses, another $25,000 in random transfers whenever mom called crying about some new crisis. $153,000, enough to buy a house outright, in most parts of the country, enough to fund a retirement account, enough to change someone's life. And not once in 8 years had anyone said thank you. Not once had anyone acknowledged what I had given. Not once had my name been mentioned when the bills got paid and the problems got solved. Then I remembered something else, something I had buried so deep I had almost forgotten it. 9 years ago, when Dylan was applying to colleges, he didn't have the grades. His athletic ability was decent but not exceptional. He had applied to his dream school and been rejected. Mom had called me in tears, begging for help. "You know people, Kimberly. You went to a good school. Can't you do something?" So I made calls. I reached out to a former classmate who worked in admissions. I asked her to take another look at Dylan's application. I wrote a recommendation letter and had a colleague sign it. I pulled strings I had spent years building, used favors I had been saving, and I got my brother into the school he wanted. Dylan never knew. He thought he got in because the admissions committee reconsidered his athletic potential. My parents praised his determination, his persistence, his refusal to give up. And Mom made me promise never to tell him. "He needs to believe he earned it," she said. "It would crush him to know." At the time, I thought I was protecting my brother. Sitting in that hotel room 9 years later, I finally asked myself the real question. Was I protecting Dylan? Or was I protecting my mother's story about Dylan? I needed to talk to someone outside my immediate family, someone who might see things I couldn't. So the next evening, I called my Aunt Helen. She was my mother's younger sister, someone I had always liked, but rarely spoke to. We had drifted apart over the years, and I had never really asked myself why. Helen answered on the second ring. When I told her about the wedding, about my parents choosing Dylan's game, she went quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that changed everything I thought I knew about my family. "Kimberly, I need to tell you something." I should have said years ago. "What do you mean? Your mother talks about you and Dylan very differently to the rest of the family. To everyone. Your grandparents before they passed your cousins me. Sandra has always told us that Dylan is the devoted child, the one who helps out, the one who takes care of your parents." Helen paused, and I could hear her taking a breath. "And you?" She tells everyone you're too busy with your career to care about family, that you never help with anything, that you only think about yourself. The room spun. I grabbed the edge of the desk to steady myself. That's not true. I've given them over $150,000. I helped them buy their house. I've been supporting Dylan for years. "I know," Helen said quietly. "I've suspected for a long time. But Sandra never mentions any of it. When your parents bought that house, she told the whole family that Dylan helped with the down payment. When their car broke down last year, she said Dylan took care of it. She's been giving him credit for everything you've done. And she's been telling everyone that you're the selfish one who never contributes anything." I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up. Helen continued. "I tried to say something once about 15 years ago. I asked Sandra why she never mentioned your help. She didn't speak to me for 6 months after that. I learned to keep quiet. But after what she did to you at your wedding, I'm done staying quiet. You deserve to know the truth." After we hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time. The pieces were finally falling into place. I wasn't forgotten. I wasn't overlooked by accident or carelessness or busy schedules. I was deliberately erased. My mother had built a story where Dylan was the golden child who supported the family, and I was the selfish daughter who never helped. She had been telling that story for decades to everyone, while secretly taking my money and my help and my love, and giving all the credit to my brother. Every time she said, "Keep it between us," she wasn't protecting anyone's pride. She was protecting her lie. Every time she said, "Don't tell Dylan," she was making sure he could take credit without even knowing there was credit to take. I hadn't been invisible by accident. My mother had worked very hard to make me invisible. I made my decision that night, not in anger, in cold, clear certainty. I logged into my bank account and stopped every automatic transfer. Then I started planning my exit. I would sell my townhouse and move somewhere far away, but I would do it carefully, legally, on my own timeline. But first, I had one more thing to do. I put together a thick envelope. Bank statements, transfer records, documentation of 8 years of invisible support, And a letter to my brother. You don't owe me anything. You didn't know, but you deserve to see the truth. What you do with it is up to you. I sent it to Dylan's apartment via certified mail, not to my parents' house. Then I sent one email to my mother. I won't be in contact for the foreseeable future. This isn't punishment. This is me choosing myself for the first time. Don't look for me. I changed my phone number, deleted my old social media accounts. I didn't disappear completely because that's nearly impossible these days. But I stopped making myself easy to reach. 3 weeks after I stopped the transfers, my mother's phone started ringing. Not calls to me. I had already changed my number. Calls from the bank, from the mortgage company, from the auto shop holding their car. In 35 years, my family never noticed what I gave. It took exactly 3 weeks for them to notice when I stopped. And once they noticed, everything began to fall apart. I learned most of what happened next through Aunt Helen, who kept me informed even when I didn't ask. She felt guilty, she said, for staying silent all those years. Now she wanted me to know the truth about everything, including the consequences my family was finally facing. The first thing to collapse was the mortgage. 2 years earlier, my parents had refinanced their house with an adjustable rate. When the rate increased, they couldn't afford the new payment. That was when Mom had called me crying, and I had quietly started sending $600 a month to cover the difference. They never knew where the money came from. Mom told Dad she had worked something out with the bank, but there was no arrangement with the bank. There was only me. When those payments stopped, the bank sent notices, then warnings, then threats. My father's car broke down around the same time, and without my emergency fund to draw from it, sat at the mechanic's shop for 3 weeks while they scrambled to find money that didn't exist. Dad had to take the bus to work. He was 62 years old, standing at bus stops in the early morning cold because the invisible support system he never knew about had finally disappeared. My mother had to go back to work. She was 59 years old and hadn't held a job in 18 years. Her skills were outdated. Her references were ancient. A friend of a friend eventually got her a part-time position as a cashier at a grocery store, minimum wage, standing on her feet for 6 hours a day scanning items and bagging groceries. The comfortable retirement she had imagined, the one she had built on my silent contributions, evaporated. Within 4 months, they had to sell the house I had helped them buy, the house where my $40,000 down payment contribution had been credited to Dylan. They moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. Helen told me my mother cried for 3 days straight. I felt something when I heard that, but it wasn't satisfaction. It was just emptiness. 35 years of giving everything I had, and this was how it ended. Meanwhile, Dylan received my envelope. Helen told me later what happened, piecing it together from conversations with cousins and from Dylan himself after he started speaking to her. Dylan opened the envelope expecting something simple, maybe a wedding photo, maybe a note. Instead, he found page after page of bank statements. He read the first page and stopped. His first reaction was not guilt or shame. It was anger. At me. He told himself I was lying, exaggerating, trying to take credit for his life because I was bitter about not being the favorite. He almost threw the whole envelope in the trash, but something made him keep reading. Maybe curiosity, maybe a small voice in the back of his mind that had always wondered how things worked out so conveniently for him. Page after page, transfer after transfer, dates and amounts and descriptions, 8 years of evidence laid out in black and white. By the time he reached the final page, his anger had shifted. It moved from me to himself, then to our mother, then to the comfortable story he had believed about himself his entire adult life. A week after reading everything, Dylan went to our parents' apartment. Helen wasn't there, but she heard about it later from our father, who had stood in the kitchen listening to the whole conversation. Dylan walked in and put the bank statements on the table. "Did you know about this, all of it?" Mom tried to deflect. "Your sister is exaggerating. She always had to make everything about her. You know how she is." Dylan held up the papers. "These are from the bank, Mom. Not from Kim. Did you know she was sending us money this whole time?" Silence. "Did you tell Grandma and Aunt Helen that I helped with the down payment on this house?" More silence. "Mom, did Kim help me get into college?" Our mother finally broke. "She made some calls, but you still had to perform. You still had to do the work. You earned your spot." Dylan stared at her. You let me believe I did it alone. You let everyone believe I was the good one, the one who helped. And Kim was selfish. Why would you do that? Mom's voice hardened. Because you needed confidence. You needed to believe in yourself. Kim was always fine. She was always strong. She didn't need the same support you did. She needed a family, Mom. She needed parents who showed up for her. And instead we took her money and pretended she didn't exist. Dylan walked out. He didn't speak to our mother for 3 weeks after that, but his feelings weren't simple even then. Some days he was furious at Mom for lying to him his whole life. Some days he was furious at himself for never questioning where all his luck came from. And some days, he admitted later, he was still angry at me for shattering the story he had believed about himself. Healing wasn't clean, it wasn't linear, but it had started. Aunt Helen decided she was done staying quiet. At a family gathering that my mother was not invited to, Helen laid out everything. She showed them the records I had shared with her. She told them about the wedding, about the money, about the lies Mom had been telling for decades. She told them how Mom had credited Dylan with my contributions and painted me as the selfish daughter who never helped. The family's reaction was swift and unanimous. Cousins who had spent years believing I was cold and career-obsessed were stunned. They remembered comments my mother had made at holidays, little remarks about how I never called, never visited, never helped out. Now they understood those were lies. An elderly great-aunt, my grandmother's sister, called my mother directly. "I'm ashamed of you," she said. "Don't call me again." For the first time in her life, my mother faced consequences. Not from me, from the community she had spent decades deceiving. Eventually, Mom got my new phone number through Helen, who gave it to her against my wishes. The phone rang one evening while Marcus and I were making dinner in our new apartment in Portland. I saw the Colorado area code and knew who it was. "Kimberly, honey, we need to talk." Mom's voice was strained, tired. "Things have been so hard since you left. Dylan hurt his knee playing soccer. He needs surgery, and insurance won't cover everything. And your father and I had to move. I'm working at a grocery store now. Can't you help just this once?" I listened until she finished. Then I asked, "Mom, did you notice what you didn't say in that whole message?" Silence. You didn't say you were sorry. You didn't ask how I am. You didn't ask about my life or my marriage or anything about me. You just asked for money. Again. She started to respond, but I continued. "I'm not going to help. Not because I hate you, because helping you never made you see me. It just made you expect more. Goodbye, Mom." I hung up. I didn't feel angry. I felt free. A month later, I received an email. Not from my mother. From Dylan. "Kim, I don't know if you'll read this. I'm not asking for anything. I just want you to know that I finally see it. What Mom did, what I let happen, because I never asked questions. I'm still working through it. Some days I'm angry at Mom. Some days I'm angry at myself. Some days, honestly, I'm still angry at you, which isn't fair, but it's the truth. But I got a job. I'm paying for my own surgery. I'm trying to be different. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I'm trying." I read his email 3 times. I didn't respond immediately. But I didn't delete it either. A month after Dylan's email, a letter arrived at my Portland apartment. Handwritten. Mailed from my mother's new address. In 35 years, she had never written me a letter. I held it in my hands, unopened, for 3 months. Part of me was afraid it would be another manipulation. Part of me was afraid it might be real. And I wasn't sure which possibility scared me more. So I let the letter sit unopened on my dresser for 3 months. Every morning I saw it there. Every night I thought about opening it. But something always stopped me. Fear, maybe. Or self-preservation. After 35 years of hoping and being disappointed, I wasn't sure I could survive another blow. It was Marcus who finally said something. One evening, he sat down beside me and said, "You don't have to open it, but I think the not knowing is hurting you more than whatever's inside." He was right. The letter had become a weight I carried everywhere. So on a quiet Sunday morning, while rain streaked down our Portland windows, I finally opened it. My hands trembled as I unfolded the paper. I recognized my mother's handwriting immediately, but the words were different from anything she had ever said to me. "Kimberly, I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if I deserve for you to read it. I was wrong. Not just about the wedding, about everything. I told myself I was protecting Dylan, that you were strong enough to handle being overlooked. But that was a lie I told myself, so I didn't have to face what I was really doing. I used you. I took your help and gave the credit to your brother. I made you invisible to everyone so Dylan could shine. And I told myself you didn't notice, because it was easier than admitting I was failing you. Helen told me what she said to the family. I was angry at first, now I'm grateful. For the first time, I had to hear what my choices sound like when someone else says them out loud. I'm not asking you to come back. I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking you to know that I see you now, and I'm sorry, Mom. I read the letter 5 times that first day. I talked to Marcus about it for hours. I cried, though not exactly from pain. It was something more complicated. After 35 years of wanting to be seen, the words had finally come. But they came after the door had already closed. Part of me wanted to believe her, but 25 years of conditioning had taught me to look for the catch, the hidden ask, the subtle shift of blame. I searched her words over and over. I couldn't find one. But that didn't mean it wasn't there. Maybe she had just gotten better at hiding it. Or maybe she meant every word. After many sleepless nights, I realized something important. I didn't need to know. The answer didn't change what I was going to do next. I wrote back 6 months after receiving her letter. I took my time because I wanted to be sure of every word. Mom, I read your letter. I believe you're sorry. I can hear it in what you wrote. But believing your apology doesn't mean I'm coming back. Not to how things were. Maybe not ever. I spent 35 years trying to earn a place in this family. I gave money I should have saved. I gave help that was never acknowledged. And the more I gave, the more invisible I became. I won't do that again. I'm not closing the door forever, but I'm not walking back through it either. If we ever rebuild something, it will be different. It will be on terms where I don't have to sacrifice myself just to be seen. Kimberly. I mailed the letter and felt something release in my chest. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just clarity. 8 months after everything fell apart, there was a knock on my apartment door. I opened it and found Dylan standing there. He looked different than I remembered. Thinner, older somehow. He was leaning slightly on a cane, still recovering from his knee surgery. I'm not here because Mom sent me, he said quickly. She doesn't even know I came. I paid for the flight myself. I've been working at a physical therapy clinic while I recover. He paused, struggling to find words. I'm here because you deserved a brother who saw you, and I never was that. I want to try, if you'll let me. He held out an envelope. I opened it and found $200 in cash. I know it's nothing, Dylan said. I'm still paying off my surgery, but I want to start paying you back. Not because you asked, because I should have known. I should have questioned where all my luck came from. I looked at the money. Then I looked at my brother standing nervously in my doorway, offering me everything he had. Keep it, I said. Pay off your surgery, build your life. That's what I would have wanted the money to do anyway. I didn't hug him. The distance between us was still too real. But I stepped aside and invited him in for coffee. We sat in my small living room and talked for 2 hours. Carefully, honestly. He told me about his recovery, about his job, about how strange it felt to work for something instead of having it handed to him. I told him about Portland, about my new position, about how much I loved the quiet of my new life. It wasn't forgiveness. It was a crack in a wall, a beginning. Maybe it would grow into something more. Maybe it wouldn't. But for the first time, my brother was seeing me. And that was worth leaving the door open. Now it's been 1 year since my wedding. I'm sitting in my Portland apartment, smaller than my Denver townhouse, but entirely mine. Every piece of furniture, every picture on the wall I chose for myself. Marcus is in the kitchen making dinner. We've started talking about the future lately. Maybe kids someday. For the first time, that idea doesn't terrify me. I think about what my mother said on that phone call. You'll understand when you have kids. I whisper to myself in the quiet of my living room. Yes, I will understand. I'll understand that no child should ever have to earn their mother's attention. I'll understand that being strong doesn't mean you don't need anything. If I'm ever a mother, my child will know they're seen. Every single day. I look out the window at the Portland rain. It's gray and soft and honest. I don't hate my parents. Hate would require energy I'm no longer willing to spend. I don't forgive them either. Not yet. Maybe not ever. That question is still open. But what I have is better than hate or forgiveness. I have freedom. Freedom from the need to be seen by people who chose not to see me. Freedom from the role of invisible provider. Freedom to build a life with people who actually show up. Marcus calls from the kitchen. Dinner's ready. I smile. I get up and walk toward the kitchen, toward my husband, toward my real family, and my real life. I spent 35 years waiting to be chosen. Then I realized I was waiting for permission that would never come. So I stopped waiting. I chose myself. And that was the best decision I ever made. Kimberly's story teaches us something that many of us learn too late in life. You cannot earn love from people who have already decided not to give it. No amount of money sacrifice or silent suffering will make someone see your worth if they have chosen to look the other way. The people who truly love you will show up without being asked. They will celebrate your victories without making them about someone else. They will see you not because you proved yourself worthy, but because seeing you is simply what love does. If you recognize yourself in Kimberly's story, please know this. Walking away is not selfish. Setting boundaries is not cruel. Choosing yourself after years of being overlooked is not revenge. It is survival. It is healing. It is the first step toward building a life where you are finally visible. Thank you for listening to this story all the way through. If it touched your heart or made you think about your own family relationships, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. We would love to hear from you. In the comments below, have you ever felt invisible in your own family? How did you find the strength to choose yourself? Share your story with us.